Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is one of my favorite people, Suzanne Dulin. You can find out more about Suzanne at her website, 8 Minutes to Inner Peace, and that's the number 8 Minutes to Inner Peace. Suzanne Dulin is the founder of Sadhana, a company that provides online learning programs on yoga and natural healing with expert teachers. And Suzanne Dulin has taught yoga for over 20 years. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for having me on the show.
Now, our topic today is about breathing exercises and a program that you've put together called 8 Minutes to Inner Peace. And lots of people, millions of people all over the world practice yoga, and they think of yoga as the physical postures. But yoga, as you and I both know, is also the most advanced system of breathing. So can you explain for our audience, what is pranayama?
So pranayama, it actually literally translates as prana mastery or mastery of energy. And so breath mastery techniques are techniques that give you control over the state of energy in your body. I think a lot of times people have this very esoteric idea of energy, like chakras and stuff. But a lot of times when I start with my classes, I'll just say to people like, how's your energy level today? And whether somebody has a background in natural healing and all that kind of energy work or not, they can understand this idea of experiencing levels of energy in their body. It's not something particularly out there, and breath work is simply a way to, I don't really think so much control it as I think master it, so that you have that ability to turn the dial up or down depending on your current state.
You know, I just love that definition that you just gave, because like you said, you know, many people have this idea that if you're doing yoga breathing, you've got to be sitting in full lotus, wearing a loincloth. In fact, one of my friends on social media, there was pictures of him and videos of him, and he's on a mountaintop in Sedona in this beautiful view, and he's naked from the waist up doing breath work, and it's pretty impressive looking. But you know, there's those of us who wake up in London and Atlanta and Edinburgh, and you know, we're just waking up, we're feeling a little achy, and we're not sure if we're, you know, fully awake, and yet we can practice breathing exercises. So, you know, in order to do yoga breathing, do you have to have any special kind of training?
You don't actually, and in fact, that's a lot about what this course is for. It's really designed for somebody who's just getting started with yoga breath work. It's got 8 different sequences, 8 different pranayama or breath mastery techniques, and it starts with literally the first one is inhale. So I'm pretty sure everyone can master that one. And then the second one, I know you're going to be surprised to hear this, exhale. So I think that those first 2, really everybody has probably already mastered to some extent. We're just helping them to get a little further with it. So it's really with the training wheels on, you can get started doing breath work. Now it does include some more difficult breath techniques such as breath of fire. But those breath techniques, you can try them out. Sometimes you see these, like, you know, warnings about breath work, but to only do it for a minute, there's really no risk. And I think there's a lot of gain that can be done. I think actually, I'm going to tell you a funny story about this. When I first started learning breath mastery, I was studying with John Schumacher. He was one of my early teachers. John Schumacher is one of the big Iyengar teachers in DC. He's the owner of one of the largest studios in the United States. He's been a long time teacher. And when he first taught me breath mastery, I remember it took about 20 minutes just for him to set up the blankets so that we could do it, you know. And so he kind of made it seem like it was really involved. And later when I started doing it, I was like, I don't understand what the big mystery was. Like, it's not that difficult.
Yeah, I love your story about that, because I've definitely studied with yoga teachers who will walk around the room and it's like you don't have your blankies folded properly. and you know, and I mean, for myself, I'm like, if this involves, you know, elaborate blanket folding, I'll never pass the test. And yet when I know when I do breath work, I'll literally, you know, lie in bed first thing in the morning and do it. And then I'll sit up in bed and do this. Now, you've created this beautiful online course, 8 Minutes to Inner Peace. Can you share for our audience, what is 8 Minutes to Inner Peace?
8 Minutes to Inner Peace is 8 different breath mastery techniques performed in a sequence. And the course teaches you a little bit about each one, not an overwhelming. You're not going to end up by the end of this course to be able to do everyone with complete mastery, but it teaches you just enough to get started. And then it has a practice video that helps you to understand how you practice it. Again, it's not, this is the master course. You're going to be able to do this, you know, at a master level. It's a beginner level. So try it out with support. And then we have a little timer that you do it, try it for a minute on your own. There's a ton of support materials in here because our goal is not necessarily that you're going to be able to do it all on your own, but our goal is that you would do it with some of the support. So we have a little handout that you can just stick in your purse and or your wallet and, you know, pull it out and follow along with it. We have an Insight Timer app audio so that you can download the app and you can listen to it and practice along with the app. And then we also have videos within the course that you can pull up and you can practice the whole sequence or any one of the individual breath work along with the video. So everything's there to help you get started. And then we also have a Facebook group so that if you have any questions, you can go in and get some support from either, you know, the instructor or from the people that are in the course who are also participating in the program.
So your program, 8 Minutes to Inner Peace, who is this course designed for?
It's designed primarily for people who have not done much breath work before. There are some people, if you've done some, I think you'll find it also useful because it's very structured. And a lot of times people are not learning pranayama in a structured way. However, the real person that we're seeking is somebody who is experiencing stress in their life and seeking some kind of tool to give them relief. Somebody who's having a health issue that they're seeking some kind of natural healing remedy for, and they have a feeling that breath work could be useful for them. Whether that's high blood pressure or sleep apnea, it's something for you to try and see if you find relief.
Right. Now, I know that when I'm working with clients who have anxiety, I like to teach them breathing exercises. How can 8 Minutes to Inner Peace help people with anxiety?
With anxiety, the breath mastery techniques that calm you, such as the deep exhaling, the alternate nostril breathing, and the ocean's breath, those breath techniques specifically are very good for anxiety. And people who are having anxiety attacks can use some of these techniques to see if they can help to get control over their breathing. Right when your breath starts to become very rapid, that's really part of what's happening during an anxiety attack. So if you can start to get control of your breath, then that can help you to control these autonomic responses that are happening. For example, you can't really directly control your heart rate, even though your heart rate speeds up during an anxiety attack. But the one thing that you can control is your breath. So it will unconsciously, automatically, it'll be speeded up. However, you can't take control of your breath, unlike your heart rate. Unless you're very, very advanced yoga master, you cannot control your heart rate consciously, but you can control your breathing consciously. So this helps you to slow down the breath, and that will help you to then slow down the other systems that are sped up during an anxiety attack.
You know, Suzanne, I'm working on my 9th book, and I'm interviewing people about different experiences they've had with natural healing for this book. And I interviewed one lady. I was so impressed because she literally got off 5 different medications using solely breath work. And her story was really profound in that, you know, first she went on, you know, ADD medication, and then she had to have sleeping medication, and she had pain medication, and I can't remember the other 2 medications, but, you know, she was on a significant amount of medication. She actually had experienced a nervous breakdown and been to a mental health facility. But the good thing for her was she still thought of herself as a healthy person. So when she got out of the mental hospital, she started practicing yoga because she needed a non-impact activity. So she gets out of this mental hospital, goes to a yoga studio, decides that she liked yoga, and then decides that she wants to learn more about it. So she took a yoga teacher training. And as part of her yoga teacher training, she learned breathing exercises. And it was after learning breathing exercises that she got off the 5 medications. And she's telling me this story. And she said, Catherine, I wouldn't recommend any of my yoga students do what I did, but she literally threw away all 5 of her drugs all at once.
Amazing.
It's an amazing story. I mean, it's one of these things that you wouldn't believe it if you hadn't have met this real person. And she said, you know, the thing about the breath and the breath work and the pranayama is that it literally controls your nervous system. And she said, just like you can give coffee to people with ADD and it'll calm them down, she said you can use stimulating breathing techniques and it will calm certain people down. So she learned breathing exercises and was able to get off 5 different drugs. So, you know, this is really important information that you are sharing through your website, 8minutestoinnerpeace.com. Suzanne, can you give our audience an overview of the 8 different breathing exercises in 8 minutes to inner peace?
Oh, you're going to give me a test. Okay, so it's inhale, exhale, circular breathing, ocean's breath, breath of fire, bellows breath, alternate nostril breathing, and I feel like there's one more in there.
Bumblebee breath. Bumblebee breath.
Bumblebee breath. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I knew it. That's the best one, bumblebee breath, because you get to do the mudra. It's the best.
Yeah, that's my favorite also. I like bumblebee breath because I have a very active mind, I admit. And, you know, women, our brains never shut down. Men, their brains actually do shut down. But women especially, you know, we need techniques to help quiet our minds. So, Suzanne, for yourself, how does breath work help you achieve a meditative state? Like, do you do breathing exercises before you meditate, or how does that work for you?
I typically use breath work during my practice. I actually recently took a workshop with a yoga teacher up at Kripalu who is a Yoganon Michael Carroll. And I was told by another teacher there that if I ever wanted to learn how to practice the way that Swami Kripalu did, and I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of Swami Kripalu practicing yoga postures, but he was phenomenal, off the hooks. And so he said, if you ever wanted to find somebody who practiced like him, study with Yoganon Michael Carroll. I studied with him this December, and what he taught was that if you go into tantric text and you go into text that the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which is the text that a lot of people go, oh, there were only 28 yoga postures, but there's also the locks and also pranayama. And what he's saying is that those things were meant to be combined, so that you only had 28 postures, but then you put them together with all these different pranayama techniques, and now you've got a whole lot of combinations of things you can do. And that particularly these fiery breaths, like breath of fire, that are done at the Hara center, at the center of the body, really help you to confront your internal issues. And so what I've been doing lately is actually going into fairly simple postures, but then really working with, like bellows breath or breath of fire rapidly in order to draw upon this strength at the center of the body. And it's very interesting. I'm still sort of playing around with it. It's just something fun to try.
Yeah, I've taught yoga for 23 years. We're yoga sisters. And, when I'm teaching those fast breaths, like bellows breath and breath of fire, when people first learn them, or when I first teach them to people, I say, you know what? You're a beginner and you may suck at the beginning. It's okay. It's like, who's perfect at anything first out of the box, right? So I say, go ahead and give yourself permission to suck, but do something, because when you're doing the rapid breath, and I'll get you to describe bellows breath and breath of fire for our audience, but basically it's breathing in and out through your solar plexus, which is the center of psychic feelings. And what I find, like you said, Suzanne, is that it allows you to clear a tremendous of subconscious material in a very quick amount of time.
Yes.
And so when people are under a lot of stress, and who isn't these days, it's one of the best ways to move through it. So what's your comment about that?
Yeah, we actually learned some really interesting things during this course specifically about that, which was that if you go back into the older tantric texts, so our modern yoga really comes out of Tantra, and I think a lot of people think of Tantra. I actually saw a very funny explanation of this by Rod Stryker, who's a tantric teacher, and he said, Tantra is equal to yoga plus sex. And then he just crossed out the yoga and said, no, this is what people's idea what Tantra is. But actually, those sex practices were a very small part of it. And most of our modern yoga comes out of Tantra. So the tantric texts that are being explored right now, there's a lot of scholarly research that's going on about them. And so one of the things that was happening way, way back, like in 6th century, was that people were going in and just scaring themselves to death, pretty much. They were confronting their fear in quite a literal way, where they would like go out in the forest and they would meditate all night in the forest, where in their world there were demons roaming around, because they lived in a supernatural world in their minds. So you can imagine, if you believed that there were demons roaming the woods and you were going out there, that would be a terrifying experience. They would go and sit by the funeral pyres where all the bodies were being burned, and they would meditate there. And this was to really have them to confront fear. Over time, they developed practices that were a little less out there. And what they discovered was that when you're working with the center of the body like this, the core of the body, that you can still be confronting fear, but in a much safer way. And so these practices do bring up a lot of internal issues, and they help you to address it. And that's exactly what we were doing in this workshop, where we were doing a lot of rapid breathing and then holding, sustaining that breath in order to sort of process something from the unconscious. And it is a very psychological experience. Now, I don't think for beginners that this is where I would recommend to go. It's something to explore as you've gotten more advanced. But what you can do within the course is you can practice these techniques. You can start to practice these techniques, and you can start to experience what it's like to work with that center of the body, because many people are very disconnected from their belly, because in our society we're trying to be skinny. And so a lot of people, they suck their belly in and they restrict their breathing. That was the biggest thing for me, was learning that I was more beautiful breathing naturally than I was with my belly sucked in.
That's very reassuring for all the rest of us, Suzanne. So your course is called 8 Minutes to Inner Peace. Why and how do you think that this particular breathing sequence helps people to move through past their anxiety, move past their stress, and get into this blissful, peaceful state? Yeah,
to laugh because I've had this kind of crazy morning, and literally while we're talking, my cat is throwing up.
Yeah. Oh, great.
So let's talk about.
Yeah.
I just have to say like exactly what's going on.
Environmental stress. Oh, I'm so sorry about your poor pussycat.
Yeah, he just has a tricky stomach that way, so it's not. He's not sick. He's just doing what he's doing. So anyhow, as far as how pranayama can help you move into a blissful state, the experience of peace fundamentally is known to us through our experience of breathing. I know that people don't really think about this that much, like what is calm? But fundamentally in our body, the way we physiologically experience calm and peace is through this experience of our breath. It's such a basic, almost subconscious experience. So if you are teaching yoga, for example, one of the things that you can do is you can observe whether people are breathing or not. And you can observe whether they're breathing and whether they're really in touch with their breathing because they slow down. And as soon as they start to connect to their breathing, you can just see this sense of grace and elegance in their body, whereas otherwise there's a sense of people being out of sync with what they're doing. They're struggling. But the moment they find their breath, the struggle goes away. So your breath is really an experience of ease. And breath work helps you to connect to the experience of breathing, and then through that you experience ease. And it's really not necessarily about these techniques. They help you to try speeding your breath up, making your breath slower, adjusting your breath different ways. But fundamentally, more basically, what they're doing is just connecting you to the experience of breathing, which is where you experience peace.
Oh, I just love that explanation. You know, our breath is where we experience peace. That is wonderful, a wonderful insight. But, you know, there's a lot of different breathing techniques. And, you know, being in natural healing, you know, I have experienced many forms of therapeutic breath work. What is it that's particularly special about 8 minutes to inner peace? You know, you've had over 20 years experience teaching yoga, and I'm sure you've done the same thing where you've had hours and years of experience with breath work. Why this particular routine is so helpful for experiencing inner peace?
It's because of the sequencing of it. And so it starts with, first of all, just sort of getting you going with inhaling and exhaling, moving you into it. And then it's adjusting your energy in a particular sequence. So it's the sequence itself that's really useful. It starts with some sort of calming techniques and then takes you into heating techniques that get your energy up. And then alternate nostril breathing is the last one, which balances the energy. And so it's not really about slowing you down or speeding you up, hyping you up. Wherever you're at, the system will take you into a place of balanced energy, which is really where we want to be. We don't want to be, sometimes when you have low energy, you can be depressed. But sometimes when you have low energy, it can just be time for bed. So your energy can be balanced and low. And then the other way, your energy, you can be hyperactive, but you also can just be also just elevated in your mood. So when you're doing the 8 minutes to inner peace, it helps to take you through to a place where you're sort of clearing your energy out and you're getting to where your energy is simply, wherever you're at, balanced. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to end up hyped up by the end of it or calmed down by the end of it. You're going to end up just more clear at wherever you're at. And so it's perfect to do before you go to sleep or when you wake up in the morning, because either way, it's going to help you just to sort of clear through the energy that you're feeling right at that moment, whether you're feeling anxious or you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling a little groggy, and help you just to get to a place where your breathing is easier and then you're more peaceful.
That's a great explanation. Now, of course, here at the Natural Healing Show, we're really about empowering people. Even if you can afford it, medicine can be extremely expensive. And then, we have lots of problems with medications, all the side effects of the medications. And in our Western society, many people are on multiple medications, and often the doctors who are our friends, they may not actually know how all of your multiple medications are interacting in your particular body. So Suzanne Dulin of 8minutes-to-innerpeace.com, why do you think that breath work is so important in our society right now?
So right now in our society, most people are overwhelmed. There's just a lot of the pace of things have really increased. And what's happening is that your sympathetic nervous system is that fight or flight response. That sympathetic nervous system is the one that it helps you to stay alive and it stimulates you. There's a lot that in our culture that stimulates your nervous system. I mean, even if you just read the headlines right now, they're always, shocking news. They're always trying to get you to respond because it's very quick for your system to go into a state of high alert. That's how it protects you. However, our systems also have a parasympathetic side of the nervous system, which helps to bring us into a sense of calm and ease. Right now, most people are just terribly out of balance where they're staying all the time in a state of alert, and it's not healthy. And that's why there's so much heart disease, there's diabetes. All of these diseases are really diseases of the sympathetic nervous system just being challenged all the time. So doing breath work, it helps to trigger your parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps you to enter a state of ease and helps to reduce the strain on the systems in your body. Because when you stay up in those states of alert, it's great if you do it every now and then in order to, to protect your life. But when you're revved up all the time, your body is just overproducing adrenaline. You're staying into a state that's taking you into sickness.
Yeah, and I want to add to what you're saying, and that's so true. And when we're constantly stressed all the time, then over the years you become exhausted, right?
Yes.
So I remember a client of mine comes in and she knows she's in stage 3 of adrenal stress, which is the later stage. And um, she said, I'm in adrenal burnout. And I said, how old are you? And she said, 46. And I said, all my clients who are 46 are in adrenal burnout. And that's why I wrote my book, Unlimited Energy Now, because this constant stress has a massive effect on your health and your energy level. But I also want to point out for our audience, the leading cause of death in America for Americans age 50 and under is now actually drug overdose. So it's part of our mission here at the Natural Healing Show to share information about what will work to deal with some of our common problems without medication whenever possible. And antidepressants, have multiple side effects, including dementia, increased thoughts of suicide and violence, and high blood pressure medication actually causes depression. And many of the anti-anxiety drugs have multiple side effects, including depression, confusion, and insomnia. So I shared with everybody the story of my friend, the fellow yoga teacher, who took herself off 5 drugs by doing breathing exercises. And it sounds outrageous, and I agree with her. I wouldn't tell everybody to throw all your drugs down the toilet and do breath work, but you can start with breath work and start experiencing inner peace and gradually find your way to a healthier state.
There's actually, with this point that you made about drugs, when I actually used to be a smoker. I smoked in high school and college, and then I quit my senior year as a result actually of some spiritual experiences that I had. And one of the things that really was the biggest help in getting off of cigarettes was I learned that nicotine is a stimulant, but many, many people smoke to calm down. The reason that smoking works to calm you down is because of the breath, the fact that you're dragging on a cigarette. It's actually, the cigarette does nothing for you. It's the fact that you're inhaling deeply that takes you into a state of calm. So one of the biggest things that I did was when I wanted to have a cigarette is I would inhale deeply. And so a lot of what people are seeking out of drugs is something that you can create through the breath. People take drugs when they're seeking relief from their problem, an immediate relief, and you can get that immediate relief through your breath. I'm not going to say that that's the only solution, but I think it can be a big piece in helping people to find a little tool that can help them to get through those cravings. That a lot of times with addictions, the physical addiction leaves very quickly from your body. It's the emotional addiction that is keeping you, returning back to the pills or returning back to the cigarettes. That emotional addiction, I think it's underplayed. I think people they really latch on to the idea of the physical addiction. That goes so fast. With cigarettes, it's out of your body in 4 days. It doesn't take long, and the side effects aren't bad. Of course, some of the other things, the side effects are worse, but even so, anybody can stand to be sick for a few days. What keeps people staying on drugs is the fact that they don't believe that they can handle their life without some kind of crutch. Breath work is a much nicer crutch than drugs, because it's you getting in touch with your own body rather than disassociating from your body.
That's great insight, Suzanne. And in my work as a medical intuitive healer, I've helped people get off marijuana, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, oxycodone, cocaine, LSD, all these medications, as well as legal addictions, such as overeating and, using food as a drug. And as you said, I think the common denominator in all these addictions is the inability to handle all of our emotions. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed by our emotions. And so if you have a technique like breathing exercises, like your 8 minutes to inner peace, so that you can start clearing the slate and start moving through some of these emotions. And I like the fact that breath work, you can do it anytime, anywhere. So
Yes. And that's one of the big things is that we provided the Insight Timer app and these little handouts, because when we were interviewing people about this course, we asked people, what interests you about it? And one person said, I like the idea that I could step into another room and in 8 minutes, I could bring myself to a place of calm, have a tool that I could use. And so, that's part of the reason why we're giving people these little tools, like literally you can go in the bathroom for 8 minutes and, nobody's going to think that's too weird. And you can sort of take a little break that will actually be effective at helping you.
Yeah, that's just so important. Now, Suzanne, you've studied with some of the top yoga teachers in the world. You mentioned a couple of them during our interview. So when you study with some of the top yogis, because again, many people think of yoga as just doing the physical exercises, but when you study with the top yogis, how important do they say that breath work is?
Breath work and meditation really are the advanced practices and the fundamental practices of yoga. So to me, these techniques are the ones that I honestly felt like they should have been introduced much earlier into my practice when they were introduced. I originally studied Iyengar yoga, which is very focused on physical postures. But I personally found that the breathwork was more effective and more important for myself. When I study with the top teachers, there's always a focus on the breath and a deep understanding of the breath. One of the teachers that I studied with, Donna Farhi, she wrote a book called The Breathing Book. And that was her training with her. She's one of my teacher training programs. She actually really teaches the fundamentals of breathing. And I teach it to people all the time. I just taught it to a newer yoga teacher, and he was like, nobody's ever explained this, how breath really works to connect you to the postures, how breath is so fundamental to this experience we're trying to create. So I think that the more advanced yogis start to really, really explore breath work in depth, and not even necessarily these controlled techniques so much as just how does just breathing work at a fundamental level, and how do we explore that experience of peace through breath. And that's one of the things is that, yes, you can do all these techniques and they help you to adjust your energy, but fundamentally what they're doing is giving you a way to start to experience how you can work with your own breathing and start to experience your breath. Pay more attention to the experience of breath, because that is the experience that we're seeking in yoga, not necessarily to be impressing people with our postures, but to come to a state where we're really focused on the present moment.
That's a beautiful explanation. Now, Suzanne Dulin, you're also, in addition to 8minutes to innerpeace.com, you're also the creator and the leader of the sadhana community on Facebook, which I believe anybody can join. Can you give everybody the link to the sadhana community on Facebook?
So the full title of the community on Facebook is the Sadhana Community for Yoga Teachers and Enthusiasts. So if you go up in that search bar and you put the Sadhana Community, then you'll want to find there's a few others that use that word. And sadhana is a dedicated practice. So there's other people using that term for yoga groups, but it's the one, Sadhana Community for Yoga Teachers and Enthusiasts. And I had to change the title because I realized nobody was finding my Facebook group without the word yoga in it. So at first I just had Sadhana Community, and then when I added the word yoga in, all of a sudden lots of people started joining.
Now, I know that you've had a personal experience that really of being in the now, as Eckhart Tolle would say. Some people might call it enlightenment or deep insight that led you to become a yoga teacher and to study breath work. Would you be willing to share with our audience what that was like?
Yes. And also for many years, I really didn't talk about this experience because it was very personal. I started talking about it because I realized, first of all, that while it was a very special experience, a lot of other people have had experiences like this, and a lot of other people also don't talk about them. So then they feel kind of alone in these experiences. The other thing is that I thought that people would maybe think as you said, I had this enlightenment experience, and that people would sort of put me up on a pedestal and feel like, oh, she had this amazing experience. She must be some kind of special person, which was fundamentally the exact opposite of what it was like to be in that state. So what happened was when I was 19 years old, I went into a state of an altered state for a day. And during that day, I experienced myself completely in a state of harmony, in a state where I wasn't thinking and I was simply trusting myself completely. That sense of trust meant that I wasn't stressed about time. I would say that that was one of the biggest changes, was that I wasn't really worried about would I get there on time. That anxiety over time, I've learned that that is something that we don't give enough credit to. Like how much stress that creates in our life, that anxiety over time. I had no worries about whether I would get to the next class on time, whether I was talking to someone long enough. I wasn't planning things in my head. I was completely trusted myself, and I trusted that things were going to happen in their own time. It was a beautiful experience. I felt very connected to other people and very humbled by that experience. Even people that I had not really liked before, I was able to really listen to them with wide open ears and recognize that we're all really part of an experience together. Over time, I've come to realize that my goal of being in that state all the time was probably not realistic. And also, I do think that our normal state of waking consciousness serves us, gets us through the day. If you want to get to the airport on time, probably, just like everything's going to be okay. It might not be the best mode to be in. Although I think sometimes you need to go into that a little more. But the thing about it is that I think it's useful to try to get into that state as much as possible.
Yes, and breath work definitely helps us. So how do you think, from your over 20 years of teaching yoga, how do you think breath work helps us to be more in the present moment, in the now, as Eckhart Tolle says?
Breath work connects you to this one thing that is always in the present moment, which is your breath. I mean, the thing about the breath is that when you focus on the breath, that always brings you back to the present moment. It's just right there. There's other ways that you can do this, but your breath is always with you. So, there's other ways that you can bring yourself to the present moment. You can focus on things, but you can focus on your breath because it's always there with you. So let's say that you're practicing meditation, you've been practicing on focusing on a candle. Well, you're not going to take a candle with you all the time, but you always have your breath with you. So that's one advantage of working with your breath. But then the other thing about your breath, like I said, is there is a fundamental experience of ease in your breath. And so the moment that you come back to it, you come back to your fundamental experience of yourself, which is an experience of love. It reminds you that you are pure love, and that you forget it. And that's what creates all that anxiety, is to come back to your breath, find the peace within. That was part of what we put into the course, was not just breath work and breath techniques, but nurturing, because we really felt that most of the people who were coming to this course were seeking some kind of haven. And we wanted them to feel that the instruction in the course not only was it giving you tools that you could use, but that there were people there who understood and were supporting you and understood that you are love, and that there was a very, very gentle sense of nurturing for that.
That's a beautiful message. So Suzanne Dulin of 8minutes to innerpeace.com, any final thoughts for our audience?
Well, I really appreciate, Catherine, you having me on here and letting me share about the work that we've been doing with the course, 8 Minutes to Inner Peace. I hope that everybody will come and look at it. I've actually been working on this as kind of a side job, and my goal is to have this be my full-time work, to serve people this way. So I really hope that you find that it's helpful and that you'll go and support the work that I'm doing by going and purchasing the course, sharing it with people if you're not wanting to purchase it, but you know somebody who could benefit from it, so that I can do more of this type of work for people. I really appreciate having the opportunity to come and share about it, and I'm hoping that lots of people will come and check it out.
You've been listening to Suzanne Dulin of 8minutes to innerpeace.com. And this is Catherine Carrigan, host of the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so that you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. And remember, the simplest form of natural healing is literally right under your nose. And although you've been breathing your entire life, you can learn how to take your breath work to another level. And Suzanne Dulin of 8minutes to innerpeace.com has put together a beautiful course to show you how. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.